Hey, Joe 200, we're back. It is Sunday, November 19th. It's Thanksgiving week. You still have classes Monday and Tuesday, and then you get Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, which is awesome. Our midterm is open this week and next week because I know that a lot of people, the last week of classes is really busy, so you don't have to take it this week, but if it works out better for you that way, you can.
So I'm going to click on it, and there it is right there, baby. All right, so you're good to go. 2 weeks, anytime in the next 2 weeks. Hey, this is our last lecture.
It is. I'm
How
sure you're
amazing. I hope
happy.
you guys appreciated all the hard work that we put into this class.
Congrats on making it through the semester.
And we do all this for you, so hopefully you'll be better human beings. Better. I'm serious.
Kind of a
It's
big
a world.
ask.
The world is a difficult place to navigate, and we've given you all kinds of new tools that you can now use to be much better. So
Okay,
it's awesome.
so your extra credit, if you choose to do it, the directions are on Blackboard, is due the last day of classes, which is Friday, December 1st. The midterm is also due that night, open for 2 weeks, but you
There
got
it
to get
is.
it done by the end of the day on
There's
Friday.
extra credit.
Your final interview paper is due the first Wednesday of finals, which is Wednesday,
is.
December 6th, by the end of the day. You know, we say 10 pages. We're loose on the page. You know, you can go more, you can go shorter. Just make sure you cover a reasonable amount of the topics that we've asked you to cover. Make sure you have 10 outside references. That means references that are not from class readings. They need to be related to gerontology, related to the subject matter. So don't use the Spider-Man movie. I mean, you can, but it won't count as one of your 10 references.
And no, here's a great time. Thanksgiving, you know, I say this every time, and I did it with my mom, and you know, forever I'd go up and see my mom, hey mom, or I'd see grandma back in the day, hey, how are you? Oh, you look good, you know, great. How about the Dodgers? And then you would float off into your own world, you know. This is going to give you some real teeth in terms of conversation, and you're going to be able to get to know your grandparents, your auntie, your uncle, whoever you interview, at a whole new level, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Sometimes people ask, can they interview two people? Because sometimes it's your mom and your grandma or your grandpa and grandma. That's fine. That sometimes those are really fun papers to read. Sometimes people ask, how does the paper break down? Usually it's half of it is the interview answers, questions and answers, and half of it is your analysis. So you talk to them about their health issues. They say they have high blood pressure and diabetes. Then you talk about those topics. You go to the American Diabetes Association website, you go to the American Heart Association website, you find information about the, let's say, how frequent high blood pressure and diabetes is, or what the impact is on health, or what the treatments are, and then you work that into your discussion.
So we talked about Social Security. You can go to the Social Security website. You can go to Medicare. Turn to financial aspects. You can go to your parents' Fidelity website. Investopedia. There's all these. So these are questions that we throw out there that you can use. You can generate your own questions. We want you to kind of survey the entire course in your questioning. If you do use these questions, that's all good. These questions will turn up in the Turnitin score, and we understand that. So.
Okay.
All right, awesome. And just like every time, there's our rubric, right? So, and look at the FAQs, very cool. All right, so you guys are good to go. So I guess we're going to go into our final week.
Yes.
Okay.
So today we're talking about estate planning, and then our discussion is about long-term care. So, you know, this is something that's really important for everybody to think about. If you die without a will, it's called dying intestate. So that's a legal term of art, intestate. And that means that you don't have a will. And guess what happens? If you die without a will, the government decides who gets your money. And they don't just come in and take it, but they will say, oh, your children will get it, your spouse will get it, your siblings will get it. You know, they'll decide an order of priority, and every state's going to be different. So you kind of want to get a will if you can, so that you're making the decisions about who gets what. And even if you don't really have assets, but if you have younger children, you'd want a will to establish who's going to be guardian of those minor children if you should die before they reach 18.
And all of your accounts, to expedite things, you put in the beneficiary, and then it streamlines the transfer of money which, the monies are important. Just ask Mr. Krabs.
Exactly. It's important to Mr. Krabs. So anyway, I gave you 2 articles to read that are short. One is from the ABA, which is the American Bar Association. So that's going to be the lawyer's point of view. So lawyers will tell you that you have to have a lawyer to draft a will or to draft a trust, that it's not something you can do on your own. The reality is, and the AARP article kind of represents the other more practical perspective, which is it's better to have a will that you hand wrote yourself or that you used software from the internet or from Costco to create a will than to have no will at all. So now in a perfect situation, you'd go see an attorney, and for a fairly reasonable price, they will draft a will, a trust, a durable power of attorney for financial, a durable power of attorney for healthcare, and they'll put everything together.
It's more sound. And there's tools that you can use just on the internet too.
Absolutely. So that's in the AARP article. So again,
if you have the simplest will, back up. All right. So somebody writes it out. Okay. Maybe that's all you got. Photograph it, put it on files, distribute it. It's all just something that's important if everything has to go to the courts or whatever. So
so most states will allow a handwritten will as long as it has it's completely handwritten and has some index of reliability, so it should have witnesses or something like that so that we can prove that you were the person who wrote that will. Interestingly, Anita Franklin's estate has been pending for quite a long time. She didn't have a will or a trust, and they found handwritten notes hidden under the couch cushions in her house, and there's a big legal fight right now about whether or not those handwritten notes rise to the level of a will that should be honored by the courts.
Who's this? Anita Franklin?
Anita Franklin.
Is that Ben Franklin's wife? I'm just kidding.
Am I saying the wrong name?
Who's Anita Franklin? I don't know who she is.
I'm sorry. I'm having a super senior moment, guys. Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin.
I just melded Anita Baker and Aretha Franklin.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. In my defense, I'm on cancer drugs.
Yeah, that's okay.
To affect my cognitive abilities. Aretha Franklin. Thank you for fixing that.
And remember Prince, all the shit that went down with Prince.
So Prince's estate has 29 claimants, everything from people claiming to be his children. Of course, a DNA test can solve that, to a guy that he met in a bar that said that Prince gave him his catalog of music. So, of course, the more money you have, the more complicated this can be if you don't have a will or a trust.
And I'm just guessing the same thing probably went down with Michael Jackson as well. So it is what it is. You prepare. So, all right, cool.
Okay, so what does a will do? It allows you to document your wishes about who's going to get your properties. And so that can be your bike, your car, your personal belongings, your jewelry, your house, your pets, your bank accounts, etc. It allows you to say who's going to be the executor, the person that's going to carry out all these decisions when you die. It allows you to make gifts to charity. USC is always like, hey, don't forget about us. As many nonprofits do, they say when you're doing your estate planning, remember us.
There's a tax savings.
Well, I don't know.
There's also a lack of distribution to your family.
Yeah. So anyway, and Florida even allows you to leave money to your dog. So, and with a lot of people who have a ton of money, they will establish a trust to take care of their pets when they're gone. And that trust can be very lavish and pay the salaries of multiple people to care for the dog.
Our dogs dug a hole, so we disinherited them today.
We took them out of the will.
Out of the will.
So what does the will not do? It doesn't pass property that passes outside of your estate. So your life insurance, quite often your bank account. This isn't always the case, but your bank account can be held with a right of survivorship. So you can put a second person. We have our bank account. It's jointly held in both of our names. Your 401k plan has a beneficiary statement. Your any sort of payable on death account, which can include certificates of deposit or money market accounts, and investment accounts, IRAs, and even real estate in many cases can be held joint tenant with right of survivorship. So if one of us were to die, the other person would automatically own the house the second the person dies. So you might want to will with a trust. So it depends on the jurisdiction you live in, the state that you live in. In California, our courts are pretty busy. They're pretty crowded. Lawyers are expensive in California. So you want to avoid probate if you can in California. And so the mechanism to avoid probate is instead of waiting until you die and then having to go to court and open up a probate case that might take a year or two to resolve everything, you create a trust. And it's a revocable trust. You transfer your assets, your big assets like your house and your bank accounts, into the name of the trust. And then when you die, that doesn't have to go through court. The person that you've designated to run the trust will just transfer ownership into your name. So John's mother had her house in a trust when she passed away, because his older brother had lived with her and taken care of her when she was, for many years. He got the house. So it was very simple. We went to an attorney. We had the deed to transfer ownership to him, drafted, filed it. It was very quick. Had she gone through probate, it would have been years. And very expensive. So she was able to get the trust drafted for not very much.
You're avoiding supervision by the court.
So you pay a little bit of money up front, but you avoid having to pay legal fees down the road. In California, probate fees are a percentage of the estate, which can be, if a house is involved, it can be quite a bit.
And it is a profession that people are court appointed, right? That's separate?
That's guardianship.
That's guardianship. Okay, yeah, sorry.
So when you sign a will, the court needs to know that it's reliable, that you signed it, that you were competent when you signed it. So you're going to use a notary that will certify that your signature, you've shown ID, that you are who you say you are. You're going to use witnesses. So you might have two witnesses, at least one of whom isn't inheriting as a beneficiary of the will, so that it will be seen to be reliable. Think about taxes. If you add someone to your home as a joint tenant with right of survivorship, it may impact the amount of taxes they owe if they sell after you die. So it's just a lot of times with estate planning, you're thinking about taxes and you're thinking about how to pass your property on. If you create a trust, you, the person that owns the house or owns the car or owns the bank account, is the grantor or the settlor. And then the people that are going to get it when you die are the beneficiaries. So you might have a will or a trust that designates guardians for your children if they are below 18. And you don't want to have the court deciding who's going to raise your kids if you die. You can designate that person in advance.
Because there are cases where people raise the kids, but then pilfer the accounts.
Yeah, so sometimes you might have one relative that would be a really great person to raise kids, but maybe isn't very good with financial issues or doesn't have time to deal with financial issues. And you might have another person that you can rely on to handle the money. So you could, in that trust, designate one person to be the guardian of the child and one person to be the person who controls the finances, the guardian of the finances. And so that way you can separate out those duties. Now, typically in a will, and I just had this conversation with a friend a week or so ago, you only want one person to be the executor of the will. And that executor is the person that carries out all of the duties to make sure that your property is distributed. And that is the person who represents your estate. You want to have one person instead of two, because if you have two, there's 100 little decisions that have to be made along the process of carrying out, settling someone's estate. And if you have two people, those two people are going to have to come to agreement 100 times. And the odds are that they're not going to come to agreement every time. And it can delay and complicate and make things really difficult.
And there's conflict and there can be bias and all these things that you want to avoid for sure.
Yeah, and you want to appoint your own executor so that it's someone that you trust, someone who's familiar with what you would want and what your wishes are, and someone who's familiar with your assets. And so I'm the executor of my dad's estate right now. And because I was the most financially stable of the three kids, and I was the person who got along with my stepmother, so that I would be the easiest person for her to deal with, since she was younger than he was. He anticipated that he would die before she did. And so you want to think about all those things, and that executor is going to have a big responsibility to figure out how to pay bills, to find all the assets of the estate, to deal with the lawyer. In his case, he's in Louisiana, and he didn't have a trust because they don't use trusts as much in Louisiana. He had just a regular will. We have to probate it in court and, go through all those legal processes. And because I'm an attorney, he thought, well, it'll be easier for me to do it.
You had to pay for the funeral home, had to pay for the burial, and all this.
Yeah,
all this had to come out of the kid's side of the trust.
Absolutely. And so under your will, like I said before, you might want to give money to charity. If you didn't have a will, it's just going to be split exactly along what the probate code in your state says. So it would go to your children, maybe your children and your spouse if you have one. If you don't have children or spouse, then it might be your siblings or your parents. And then they'll go back layers and layers and layers of family. But what if you have stepkids that aren't, maybe you haven't adopted them? What if you have a caregiver that provided really meaningful services to you? What if you had a neighbor or a friend or a partner and you weren't married? A lot of people, don't get married these days. So you want to make sure that person's protected. John had an aunt who was a nurse in World War II, and she lived with and had a partner for many, many years.
Who was also a nurse in World War II.
Yes. Right? And when her partner died, it was tragic because her partner's family came in, grabbed the corpse basically, and took it out of state and buried her elsewhere. And it broke John's aunt's heart that, even though they had dealt with the financial issues and she was the beneficiary of her partner's estate, she didn't have any control. And this was, quite a few years ago, probably 25 years ago. She didn't have any control over what happened to this person that she spent her entire life with. So it's very important if you're not married to get these things nailed down in writing in an estate plan so that your partner isn't left high and dry if something happens. So you can go down. You can create a trust if you want to give money to your children, but maybe you have an amazing amount of money and you think that's too much of a burden to give to someone when they're 18 or 21, you can have a trust that says, I'll give a payment at 25 and a payment at 30 and a payment at 35. My aunt and uncle did that. Their daughter, who's a great person, was involved with and had a child with someone who wasn't very responsible financially.
Gold digger.
So they didn't want him to spend all of her money. So
he tried.
They created a trust that would give her payments, set payments on a certain schedule. And I don't want to be mean, but thankfully they did break up. And, they may have adjusted the trust now. And so they know she's very smart and very capable, and they know that they could trust her.
In the right spot here. Should be done.
So I've already talked about this. Oh, if you execute the will, you're going to have it either notarized or witnessed to make sure that it's reliable.
Property,
we talked about that. The last thing is we talked about trusts.
Awesome.
Okay,
very cool.
Annuities and retirement benefits. So it's really important. You may have
from your critical thinking assignment too.
Yes. Okay. You may have a retirement account at work. You may have a pension at work. You may have an annuity through work. And you
have your own private invested annuity.
And so you need to make sure that you have beneficiary statements lined up for all of those accounts. And so you can usually go online, go into the account, and for any of you, even if you're 18, 19, 20, 22 years old, you should go ahead and have beneficiaries on your accounts. And so you go online and you have a primary beneficiary and typically a contingent beneficiary. So if that primary beneficiary dies before you do, then you've got a second choice. So for me, on my accounts, I have John as my primary beneficiary, and I have my two sons getting 50-50 if he predeceases me, right? Yes, that's how that would work. Okay. And if you have a pension or an annuity, what I did with one of the pensions I get one pension. I don't want to make it sound like I have a ton of pensions. I have a pension that had a really great deal. It said, okay, if you claim this pension and it's only your pension and when you die it goes away, we'll give you X amount of dollars a month. But if you want your spouse to get a survivor benefit on the pension, you can choose a joint survivor benefit,
Smaller amount of money.
And it was like $25 less a month. So I said, heck yes. I said, heck yes. People in John's family live well into their 90s. So I want to make sure that he's getting that free money for as long as he lives.
To pay for all the future orthopedic surgeries that I'm going to have.
Right. We got to keep paying for that rehab and the PT and the surgeries and stuff like that. So life insurance, you want to make sure that if you have life insurance, typically through work, but you can buy life insurance privately, you want to make sure that you have a beneficiary listed on your life insurance. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, I remember in one of those other things when we were talking about durable power of attorney for healthcare and durable power of attorney for financial, I remember that she said, you need to go back and revisit these documents periodically. Well, you really need to do it with your estate planning documents. Say, anytime you marry, divorce, break up with your partner, have a child, become estranged from a child, become estranged from your family, move to a different state,
you gotta
change
update
jobs.
All of your documents.
Yes. So there are many cases, sadly, that have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court where someone gets a divorce, their ex-spouse is still listed as the beneficiary on the life insurance or the beneficiary on their 401k plan. And that wasn't that person's intention. They wanted that money to go to their daughter, but they didn't fill out the paperwork correctly. So the ex-wife, who they had a bitter divorce with, ends up getting a huge chunk of money, and their children don't get it. So
this is really good, like Thanksgiving dinner conversations. Say, hey, guys, have you updated your beneficiary statements on your life insurance? Okay. On your annuities, okay, et cetera, et cetera.
And, I think that, for example, we have accounts with Bank of America because John's dad worked at Bank of America his whole career. And with my account, I can go online and I can find the beneficiary statement, fill it out. Same thing with the credit union, USC Credit Union. We have Fidelity accounts. And so I have a little notebook that I put together in one of my more paranoid moments. I put together a little notebook that says, these are my accounts. Here's copies of the beneficiary statements, and here's directions for what to do if I die.
This is all getting your ducks in a line.
So AARP has a more practical approach. And they're talking about the fact that there's all these hurdles for why people don't get estate planning done.
And this image right here is because people were caught off guard by COVID.
Yeah. Now, people were getting sick and dying without much warning, and before they really anticipated it. And a lot of people don't like to think about death, but for me, it just makes me feel happy to know that I've got everything organized and that it's handled and that I'm not going to leave a burden for my kids. So 30% of people 65 and older don't have estate planning done, 40% of people 50 to 64. And they say, why haven't you done it? Well, I don't have time. I'm just procrastinating. I'm putting it off. I don't really have that many assets. Or I need to find a lawyer and I have no idea where to start.
So that's just lazy talk, and then you are a burden. You're kind of burdened because when you die now, it's going to be a pain in the behind for everybody.
And if you don't own a home, if you have, bank accounts, cars, things like that, then it's a little bit simpler. Then you can just put that beneficiary statement, right of survivorship on all of your accounts, and it might be a little bit simpler. And if you have a very small estate, there is mechanisms to avoid having to go through probate if your estate's below a certain dollar value. That'll be different depending on what jurisdiction you're in. So AARP gives options. They're talking here about how you need more than a will. Your estate planning attorney will put together your durable power of attorney for healthcare, financial, et cetera. So they've got these different options that you can go in and check out. Some of them are free. Some of them are very low cost. And I think
do it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's okay. As long as you make sure that it's something that you can verify will be effective in your state, because different states have different rules. So, my dad lived outside New Orleans in Louisiana. Louisiana law is very, very different than it is out here in California. So he had a Louisiana lawyer put together his will according to Louisiana law. So you want to make sure you're doing a will that works for your jurisdiction.
So these are resources, guys. You can check out the attorneys here. People do work pro bono, all right? What does pro bono mean? It's
For free.
For free.
For the good of the public.
For the good of the public. Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Awesome. Right.
We got John's brother's estate planning done for about $900 or $1,000 about 8 years ago. So it's probably a little more expensive now, but it's doable. Or like I said, you can do it free online. Be thoughtful about who you pick to be your executor, because this is a responsibility. I laugh sometimes with John working through my dad's estate. It's like filing your tax return and going to the DMV and putting that together in terms of all the little persnickety little things that you have to do. So someone who's good with numbers, someone who's good with details, someone who's going to stay calm. I've had some how do I say this? I have some siblings that, like, literally my dad died on a Thursday night, and by Saturday they were like, where's the money? Where's the money? So you're going to have to stay calm in emotional situations and do what's best for, I always say, this is what my dad would want. I'm going to stay calm for him. He wants me to just get it done.
She's the youngest. And so, as it says here, the oldest child is tradition. However, she's the only one that accepted this stepmom of 33
years.
3 years. She's grandma to our kids, and dividing up the estate. It was crucial that she got what was appropriate and legally hers, and then the distribution amongst the 3 kids had to be appropriate, and there were some issues. So
anyway, you need to have someone who's strong enough that's going to do the right thing when called upon. Okay, so now we can go to the discussion.
All righty, very cool.
So the discussion's about long-term care. And when you get older, it's just a statistically verifiable fact that as we get older, when you get to be in your 60s, 70s, 80s, you're going to be much more likely to have physical health issues that may impact what we call activities of daily living. So activities of daily living are things like eating, getting dressed, bathing, getting out of bed, getting up and down out of chairs, going to the toilet, things like that, transferring from your bed to a chair. And so those are the basic activities of daily living. And so for people who are having difficulty with that, they may need home health care at home. They may need some sort of personal care or home care at home. They may need, if they've got a health issue that requires skilled services, they may need to end up in a nursing home. They may end up in an assisted living facility where they can get services but still live independently.
This needs lots of planning.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money, and other than going into a nursing home, people get these long-term care insurance policies, and they can be difficult to cash in on. So.
Yeah, so I handled my dad's long-term care insurance. It was very difficult. I would guess that in the last year of his life, I spent 200 hours on the phone or writing emails or trying to navigate his long-term care insurance.
And they fought it, and he got maybe $5,000 worth of care, and then he died, and probably paid, $100,000 into the policy. So.
They knew that he had lung cancer, so they were kind of running out the clock.
Do you want me to open any of these files?
Not yet,
okay.
not yet.
Right.
Well, actually, you know what? You can open what is the long-term care thing.
So the other thing that we've talked about in this class is planning, and I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but this is why multi-generational housing is so important. I had a good buddy that I actually saw at Costco today, and he talked about his dad, and it was costing him in a memory care unit, it was costing him about $90,000 a year, and he did it for about 6 months, and he's like, whoa, nothing's covering this. This is completely out of pocket, and they have to transfer him home, and you have to think about how you're going to handle that. So
yeah,
really
my
tough.
stepdad was a football player in college, just for like a year or so, and had a really bad knee injury. And he's a big, tall guy, pretty husky, and he's got a lot of. He's had a lot of injuries. He fell and injured his back, and fell. He's done his hip. He's done his knee
replacement.
He's got fusions in his back. So he has people who come in the morning and in the evening, and they help make him food.
That's my future.
They help make him food. They help him get his shoes on because he can't lean over because his back's all messed up.
We have athletes in this class. So I had a herniated disc and back surgery. I had 3 knee surgeries and then a total knee replacement. I had left shoulder surgery. I just had right shoulder surgery, torn hamstring.
And his wrists are going out.
My wrists are going out from being an athlete my whole life.
That's okay. We have access to good medical care and good insurance, so we're going to keep operating on John until he works, until he's fixed.
But I keep trying.
But
I
anyway,
still want to be an athlete. So
long-term care. So you might need, for a lot of people, they move into assisted living because then they have transportation to doctor's appointments, help with meals, activities. Living in assisted living is kind of like living in a college dorm where you've got stuff going on, you've got food, you've got social activities. So it's kind of really nice. My aunt had early onset dementia and a seizure disorder, so she had to retire early, and she wasn't able to live by herself, but she didn't want to burden my mom, so we put her into an assisted living facility, and she was so happy. She was, interestingly, when she lived alone, she was very introverted and didn't go out and didn't socialize. When she moved into this assisted living facility, she became the life of the party, and she was on all the welcome committees and the newsletter committee, and she had a ton of friends, and it was really a wonderful, wonderful experience for her.
Assisted living facilities are going to cost, I don't know, like what, 40 grand a year, something like that.
Yeah, it really depends. It really depends on where you live.
So, so if you have a home, then you can just, reverse mortgage it, or you can use your 401k or whatever your assets for.
Yeah.
But it's not free.
So some people who need long-term care, it's temporary. Yeah. So John's nephew was in a really bad motorcycle accident. He's 40 years old, but he's in a rehab facility, and he will be in that rehab facility until he can get up and put weight on his legs.
He severed both femurs and his tibia. You know what the famous adage is about motorcycles?
I think we told him that last week.
That's right. I'll do it again. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
But anyway, so he's in a rehab center. So it's temporary. He's going to get better. He's going to be able to go home. But some people, you have maybe a long, slow decline, and you may end up going to a nursing home, and you may live there for the rest of your life. So the average amount of time I think a person spends in nursing homes is probably 1 to 2 years towards the end of life.
This video is not in this PDF file, but you can find the video by going to the actual website right here. Okay.
So who is the average long-term care patient? It tends to be obviously an older person. Women, because they live longer, so they tend to outlive their support. Their spouse is already gone. Single people in poorer health, right? Sometimes, and I think there's a growing movement towards this, people want to stay in their own homes.
Oh, of course.
So we have home-based long-term care services, community services. So I was able to help my dad. He wanted to stay at home, and my stepmother, who was wonderful with him, took care of him and made sure he got his medicine and made sure he got dressed and helped him go to bed. And she did everything for him for the last few years of his life so that he could stay comfortably at home. And he had home health caregivers that would come in when he had health issues, like he needed wound care, he needed physical therapy, he needed occupational therapy, skilled nursing. And we were working on hiring a home caregiver that would just come and sit with him to take care of him when she had to be out of the house.
Right. So the assisted living and the tier, skilled nursing is most expensive, assisted living, and then the whole home health care you can ratchet up as you need, right? So if you need
But it depends on what your doctor orders.
Yeah,
so it's typically paid through Medicare. Right. You can have it for the rest of your life. You can have unlimited home health care services if it is necessary to maintain or prevent you from getting worse. For people who are trying to stay at home and remain independent, we have technology like, the life alert, I've fallen and I can't get up, or Apple watches, or I think Google has a watch now that will alert if you've fallen. And so we may have to get something like that for John's brother because we told him about that. No, not for you.
Yeah, my brother.
You're not there yet. But he lives alone and he's fallen twice recently, and so we're concerned about him. So we may have to set him up with an Apple Watch.
He likes the ganja a little too much.
Anyway, and it's important. So how are you going to pay for all this? We know that a lot of seniors are living on, let's say, $1,400 a month with Social Security payments. You need to have either have this be getting paid out of Medicare. Medicare doesn't pay for, most of the time, doesn't pay for assisted living. It has a limit on what it'll pay for nursing homes of 100 days. Medicaid takes over. Medicaid takes over at a certain point when your assets, in some cases, get low enough. So financial issues are big. So I want you to get out of here and then go to the Genworth cost of care survey. So just click on that. So that little rectangle there takes you to a website called Genworth. And this, I think, is really cool because it shows what the cost of care is around the country. So we can look at, enter LA, just put in the zip code for Monterey Park or something like that. Or you could just click on that. You can probably click on that.
That's what I just did. So I clicked on LA. All right. Is that good?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and so this is a few years old. It's from 2021.
Right.
But you can see that most people have semi-private rooms in a nursing home. This is the
monthly fee.
Yeah, so that's the monthly cost is $9,000 to $11,000 to be in a nursing home. Assisted living is $5,000. That's bare bones. If you need help getting bathed, if you need help getting dressed, if you need help with housekeeping, if you need help with medication, everything's going to be an added-on charge. So it's very easy to spend $10,000 a month on assisted living.
Is this like a drop-off program?
Yeah, adult daycare is just like kid daycare, only for adults. Right. So you would drop that person off. So that's
and you can see the home health aid is pricey. And they're not going to help you with homemaker services. So is that what that means right there?
Yeah. So typically you would have to hire a separate person for housekeeping, meal preparation, things like that. So now I want you to go up and go back and then select, say, Houston or New Orleans or something like that. Someplace where it's a little more rural. There's less regulation. The cost of land is less.
Houston's not so. How about San Antonio?
Yeah.
Right? Did I get it right? Yeah.
Okay, it's not
Texas. It just says Texas.
Yeah. So let's look at Texas.
Right. So
okay. So
prices went down.
Now the prices went down to $5,000 to $7,000 instead of $9,000 to $11,000.
Right.
Assisted living is $4,000 instead of $5,000 or $6,000. Home health aid stayed pretty comparable because they're kind of at the bottom of the price range anyway.
Let's check it out. New Mexico. All right, so there you go. See, this is cheaper.
And then if you live in Hawaii, Hawaii's very expensive. Alaska is very expensive, and so it really just depends on.
Do they have Hawaii?
Yeah, I think.
I don't know if they do. It's out there, but I don't know if it's good. No. Oh,
it won't do it.
Oh, we can just say
Hawaii. Yeah, so Hawaii is one of the more expensive places. Washington, D.C. is expensive. So it really depends. This is why people do tend.
Oh, see that?
In Hawaii, it's $12,000 to $14,000. Land is expensive. The cost of labor is expensive.
This is about the same. See?
And I anticipate that these prices are going to go up. In California, we just passed a minimum wage law for healthcare settings that include long-term care.
And rightly so. I mean, this is really hard work, and these people are being paid minimum wage.
Yeah. So we're going to see higher wages in this area. So the bottom line is, it's important to plan, to try to figure out how you're going to handle these costs. It helps to have someone who can help navigate Medicare, Medicaid, the insurance process to get full coverage for the things that are covered by Medicare or Medicaid. And then, for example, I was far away from my dad. He was outside New Orleans. I'm here in California. But I could go online and do a lot of the caregiving in terms of pushing through things in his insurance, his Medicare plan, his long-term care insurance plan. And so I could do a lot of that remotely. So there's a lot of ways that you can support your loved ones as they get older. So that's, I think, all I have. Thanks for hanging in with us this semester. He's trying to get the dog.
This is Lucy.
We gotta have one last Lucy sighting.
Lucy says, speaking of caregiving, I'd like my dinner.
She would like her dinner. I thought someone fed her.
I don't know, maybe she did.
No.
Okay. And I just want to say it's been a tough year for our football team right here. But the bottom line is every one of the football players, there's some of them in this class, work their tails off. It is what it is. It's a really, really, really tough profession. They'll come back next year. Doesn't mean that we're Bruin fans. But
isn't that a Rams?
we can all be Ram
We can be
fans.
Rams fans.
They won
Rams
today.
fans.
Awesome. Beat up on
And I
Seattle.
know next year will be a better year. And by the way, shout out to the men's water polo team who did beat UCLA this weekend. And like John said, you know, it's hard to have a crushing defeat like we experienced this weekend. But I will say this, the difference when you're talking about performing at such an elite level, the difference between being undefeated and losing some games is so small. And so I salute the hard work that everyone
You know
put
what?
into it.
You know, life is a series of comebacks, and just look at me, okay? And Julie as well with her battle with cancer. So it's all, you know, you just got to keep your foot on the gas pedal, right?
That's right.
So that's it, guys. Peace.
All right.
It's been a great semester.
Fight on.
And don't hesitate to contact us if you need any help, assistance in any way. And we'll see you next time.
All righty. Bye-bye.